Now I take the opportunity to introduce briefly Prema Gauranga Prabhu. He is a resident monk at Sri Sri Radha Gopinath Mandir, ISKCON, Mumbai for more than 20 years. He completed his bachelor's in engineering from University of Pune, and post that he was with Tata Motors for 4 years before he finally decided to be a monk at the ISKCON Chowpatty temple. He has been involved in some very important activities. The ISKCON's flagship project, the Temple of Vedic Planetarium at Sridham, Mayapur, West Bengal. And in fact, the conference that we are having is towards the construction of the Vedic Planetarium. So I request Prabhuji to make presentation where science marries art, deducing the value of ghaṭīkā as mentioned in the Bhāgavata Purāṇa.
Thank you, and I should personally thank each one of you for accepting the invite to come for this conference. So we're taking this topic of where science marries art, as Dr. Aditya was rightly mentioning in the morning. That it's not only about science, but the way the whole scriptures have been written is very poetic, it's very artistic. And as Dr. Iyengar was saying the other day, that it has multi-layered meanings. It's what we want, what perspective we see, adhyatmika, adhibhautika, adhidaivika. And this is where we'll be actually looking into this aspect of the value of the ghaṭīkā. So I'll just in short be discussing the methodology and the theological perspective, determining the reference latitude by using two methodologies that's been used in the Bhāgavata Purāṇa. The main problem area is the units of time, especially the value of ghaṭīkā, as mentioned in the Bhāgavata Purāṇa. The research methodology basically uses both the Shabda and Pratyaksha Pramanas. And then we infer the values of ghaṭīkā using experiments, which indirectly leads to the value of a yojana, and identify further research areas for that. So, since all the other pramanas start from Pratyaksha and extend it, they depend upon its validity. One who insists on always distrusting the evidence of his senses will have no basis for participating in philosophy or, for that matter, in any meaningful aspect of life. So, as in the epistemology that Professor Srinivas was mentioning, it's Pratyaksha Praman, Shabd Praman, and Anuman Pramans. But for the theologians, it's the Shabd Praman that always holds the sway. While for the empirics or the scientists, it's always the Pratyaksha Praman. But here, Srila Jiva Goswami is making this point specifically that you cannot in this way discount Pratyaksha Praman even for the theologians. Just as Gauranga Prabhu was mentioning in the morning today that the assimilation of science and spirituality. So he actually presented one part where, he was saying that the scientists are looking towards the spiritualist. But even for the spiritualist, it's very important that they keep the scientific temper, lest it just becomes all about sentiment. So it has to coexist. So here he makes this point that how practicing sadhaka, so it's when you're reading a scripture or trying to understand the scripture, as again the point was made of consciousness, that you understand the scripture according to the quality of your consciousness. And Srila Jiva Goswami is making this point, as the sadhaka actually purifies himself by following the scriptures in his life, as a way of life, he's better able to appreciate the scriptures and get to its true meanings. The third point that he makes is pratyaksha should be supported by shabda, not contradicted, except in cases where shabd imposes itself on pratyaksha. That also is kvachit, and can be reinterpreted by employing non-literal meanings in certain circumstances, especially when the direct meaning is implausible, when it does not match with our observation of the world. Example, village is on the Ganges. So it does not literally mean that the village is on the Ganges, but it means it's on the bank of the Ganges. This is the example that he gives. This is from Vayu Purāṇa, which says, especially in relation to astronomy and cosmology, dear intellectuals, the eye, the scriptures, the water, the pictures, diagrams, and... Oh, sorry. Yeah, his laptop doesn't have that font, yeah. So, any case. So here he says, dear intellectuals, the eye, the scriptures, the water, the pictures, diagrams, and mathematics. These 5 are the means of knowing anything about the celestial system. Very interesting. And here, mathematics then becomes a common language for both the spiritualist and the empiric scientist. Then he puts up a question. Bhaskaracharya is putting a question in the Siddhāntic Shiromani in his Bhasan Bhashya. But the scriptures have been mutilated by copists and students over a period of time. There are many also. What shall we rely upon then? The reply is that we should rely upon the one which confirms with mathematics. So a very important statement that he's making here. And this is what we are really going to use. So for the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, in that sense, Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam becomes the topmost scripture in terms of reference. It becomes the primary scripture. Aradhya Bhagavan Vrajeshata Dham Shri Vrindavanam Ramya Kachit Upasana Vrajavadu Vargena Ya Kalpita Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Amalam Purāṇam Premapum Arthum Mahan Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhur Matamidam Tatra Adrahana Paraha. So here in the Chaitanya Manjusha, Chakravarti Pad is saying that the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam is taken as the primary scriptures for the Vaishnavas, the Gaudiya Vaishnavas specifically. And he actually gives 19 reasons of why it is so. So I will not go into the theological part because then it disturbs the thing. But just to highlight what he says, he actually establishes the Puranas and Itihasas more important than the Vedas. And he gives a lot of references for that. And after deducing that aspect, he then establishes how the Bhāgavata Purāṇa is the most important of all the scriptures. So I'll just go through this fast. It says the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam has the characteristics of a Purāṇa. It is apaurushya. It represents the essence of all the Vedas, Itihasas, and Purāṇas. It is based on the Vedanta Sutra. It's actually a natural commentary of the Vedanta Sutra because it is Srila Vyasadeva who compiles the Vedanta Sutra and then being dissatisfied after compiling all the Shastras in his maturity is advised by Srila Vyasadeva to compile the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. So that is one reason that the Gaudiya Vaishnavas from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's time up till Baldev Vidyabhushan didn't have a commentary on the Vedanta Sutra. And because they were challenged by the other Vaishnava Sampradayas, because any Sampradaya should have a commentary on the Vedanta Sutra, it is then that Baldev Vidyabhushan, who is also connected to the Madhva Sampradaya, writes a commentary on behalf of the Gaudiyas. So that was available throughout the land in its complete form. It is the culmination of Srila Vedvya's literary output, composed in its maturity. It is respected by all Vaishnava Acharyas and also many others, and is the most popular of the Puranas. It establishes the meaning of the Mahabharata, which contains the conclusions of all scriptures. Elucidates the meaning of the Vedas, all the Puranas, the Vedanta Sutra, Mahabharata, and the Gayatri Mantra. The first slok starting with Dhimahi. In addition, it is said to have been spoken by the Supreme Lord and be the Purāṇic equivalent of the Samaveda. Sud Goswami, who has deliberated on the scriptures for a long time, has described in the statements that can be understood at once, anjasa, completely, ekantataha, and from the beginning, the highest object for mankind. So besides taking Srila Prabhupada's translation, English translation of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavata Purāṇa, for about 5 chapters, we have also translated the Sanskrit into English for nearly about 14 acharyas, and I should thank Professor Kala Acharya ji. She has helped me in translating into English most of the Sanskrit commentaries of the 14 acharyas, and that's why she's been kind enough to come here and just hear what it is all about. So, moving from theology to mathematics, now we should also appreciate the fact, because the Puranas usually are taken quite imaginative in their presentation. But we should appreciate the fact it is so because, it has been addressed for a simpler audience. It's not meant for a technical, just like the Siddhantas are for a more technical audience. The Puranas present things simplistically, but it doesn't mean that they're just too simple. It's not like that. Appreciate the fact that the complicated subject matters have been addressed with simple and easily understandable analogies so that the point is put across a wider section of audience. Also, some figures mentioned in the 5th canto should use some point on the earth as a reference point to be more relatable to the people of Kali, because the Bhagavad Purāṇa is supposed to be specifically for the people of Kali Yuga. And also, specifically, Kali Yuga is supposed to only be in the earthly realm, not in the other realms. It doesn't prevail in the other realms. So it has to be dealing with observations from earth. Also, that no questions were put up to Sud Goswami by the sages present. The audience in the earlier conversation having included the translational spaceman Narad Muni and the compiler of the Vedas, Vyasdev. That is when Sukadeva Goswami was speaking. So he had in the audience Narad Muni and Ved Vyas both listening to him. None of them, actually questioned to what he's speaking. Just like, we presenters, like research interns, we present and all professors are ready with the questions. But here, Sukadeva Goswami has been a student of Ved Vyas, and Ved Vyas is in the audience, and Narad is in the audience, who is the professor of Ved Vyas, just as we have Sri Ram and then K. Ram Subramaniam and Aditya all in the same line. But then you question, right? Here no one is questioning him. Of course, they are being sensitive because there is no time. Parikshit Maharaj has just 7 days to, live. That is one aspect. But definitely no one is questioning his cosmology here. So the interesting part is, like we all discussed about the Saptadeeps. Now, the story behind this, an interesting story, is Priyavrat Maharaj's story. So Priyavrat Maharaj, when he sees actually that, he's not very happy with the heat and light that is being provided by the sun. So he decides that there should be even light in the night, and in the winters it should be warm. So he actually creates another sun for making that happen. And but what he does is, he takes the sun on a chariot. He actually has 7 successive chariots that move around Meru. And it is the wheel of these chariots that actually make these oceans on the Bhumandala, that we say Satyadweep and the Saptasamundars. So it's because of this movement of Priyavrat Maharaj's 7 chariots. So it becomes so obvious, if this is what he is doing, that means he has to know the movements of the sun. Otherwise, he can't replicate it, even in the opposite direction. So once we can mathematically verify of what Priyavrat Maharaj understood about the movements of the sun, we'll get a better concept of what the Bhumandala is. And that is what the Bhāgavata Purāṇa is doing. So the Siddhāntic texts, actually relate more with the observational data and the computations of it. But the Bhāgavata Purāṇa, interestingly, is giving a model, a complete model. Taking the Bhumandal as the celestial plane, just like you have the galactic center, the galactic plane. So here it is taking the Bhumandal as one of the main celestial reference planes. But what is that Bhumandal? That can really be understood once you understand the movements of the sun as given in the Bhāgavata Purāṇa. So Sukadeva Goswami is really brilliant and poetic in using all the coordinate systems. He actually weaves, the horizontal coordinate system, the ecliptic coordinate system, in such seamless way that actually for a layman it'll appear, it's making no sense. But for a man well versed with these coordinate systems, he can immediately appreciate what Sukadeva Goswami is trying to do. So basically he uses more than 150 numericals from chapters 16 to 24 of the 5th canto. And that's quite a huge number. No one is going to throw figures at a person who's going to, die in 7 days. That's Parikshit Maharaj. He is his primary audience. So when he is using just 150 numericals, that means it has some purpose. Now, when he does that, he actually gives the distances of all the dvipas, and he also mentions the vertical distance of the planets. So this now very easily lends the whole description into what we can say is a cylindrical coordinate system. Which makes locating planets and the other astral objects very easy, specifically in relation to the movements of the sun. Now, the interesting point is the 21st chapter of the 5th canto mentions the velocity of the sun, and he gives 3 different velocities. And so the first question that actually struck me was, it has to be in reference to some latitude. Otherwise, how can you know what exactly is he talking about? So he actually gives an indication to the reference latitude using 2 different methods. One is actually calculated by the method of varying velocities for varying latitudes at different times of the year. And the second method that he uses is calculated by the method of varying velocities for varying latitudes at different times of the year. So, the difficulty here is when you use these two methods, I don't need to know the value of yojana here in terms of miles or kilometers. But what I really have to know is how he uses the measurement of time. And Srila Prabhupada, actually the verses use the ghaṭīkā, and Prabhupada translates it as 24 minutes and 30 minutes. So he uses two figures. Now that put me into a quandary, because if you're using two figures, it makes it difficult what exactly it is. Is it that 24 minutes is an approximation? But he's very clear. So in verse number 4, he says ghaṭīkā means 30 minutes. And then immediately in verse number 10, that's just 6 verses down the line, he says ghaṭīkā be half hours, actually 24 minutes. And then in verse number 12 for the 21st chapter, he says muratena, 48 minutes, and ghaṭīkā is supposed to be half of a murat, which implies ghaṭīkā is 24 minutes. And 19th he is not very clear about, but if you study this text, actually indirectly it implies 30 minutes. So in his other books, he again uses the same system, 30 minutes, half an hour, 24 minutes. And this he's been doing over a period of time. So that led me into, that there has to be an answer to this, otherwise I cannot move forward. But thankfully, for all the, for all that the Bhagavatam gives, it actually describes how you can calculate the ghaṭīkā. So of course, this is just a small compilation, as Dr. Iyengar was mentioning the nadika, so the is basically an outflowing vessel, and the ghaṭīkā is basically an inflowing sinking bowl type. But basically, they're measuring the same unit. So in that sense, Sri Vanchidhar in the commentary says, Nadika means danda on the basis of meaning from the lexicon, ghati, dandascha, nadika. Ghati, danda, and nadika are synonyms. So here, the Bhagavat actually defines how you can calculate the value of the ghaṭīkā. So it says, Dvadarsh Ardha Pal Ulmanam Chaturvi Chaturangule Swarnamase Krita Chidram Yavat Prastha Jalaplutam. So it says the measuring pot for one nadika or danda can be prepared with a 6 pala weight pot of copper in which a hole is bored with a gold probe weighing 4 mass and measuring 4 fingers long when the pot is placed on water. The time before the water overflows in the pot is called one danda. So this is where I was, this is exciting, to just have a copper pot and just make a hole because it gives the diameter. But it was not that easy, as I thought. The thing is because the units that have been referred to are, traditional units, which vary in their understanding in the modern context. But luckily, I think Krishna was merciful. I didn't have to struggle too much. Prabhupada translates 6 pal as 14 ounce, which he actually mentions differently, but it does not, affect the experiment so much. It should probably be more about 13 ounce. But it doesn't, actually affect the experiment too much because mass and pala are related. So if the pala value changes slightly, that means if the vessel gets a bit larger, then even the hole will get larger because massa and pala are related. So taking these calculations, we moved ahead, but the real crucial thing was the value of prastha. Now, the prastha, there's only one acharya, that's Vanchidhar, and he says one should refer to Sharangadhar for the reference of what prastha means. Now, just like, even in the English system, you have ounce and fluid ounce. So depending upon what you are measuring, the weight unit changes. Just like fluid ounce is different from ounce for solids. Similarly, when you are taking volume, so prastha for an rasayan or prastha for a solid is different from prastha for a liquid. But here we are talking of ghaṭīkā, where water is the liquid that is going to enter into the ghaṭīkā. So when he's saying prastha, technically for a solid substance it is 16, but because it's referring to a fluid, it has to be taken twice of 16 palas. So then it comes to approximately 2116 centimeter cube, or the volume of the vessel. You make the vessel accordingly. Of course, these are all the references that I have taken from the Shushruta Samhita and even the lexicon. I think it has to be the Moniya Williams and the Manusmriti. These are all the references. I'm not going into detail of that so that we don't get caught up in the references. But after the volume is calculated, the diameter of the needle or the probe for the made of gold is mentioned, which actually gives the diameter of the hole. So once the diameter of the hole is made, the volume of the vessel is known. You just have to take the vessel. So since the title is like Science Marries Art, I just made an artistic ghaṭīkā. But this is like a copper ghaṭīkā, and I made plenty of them. So why I did that also has a reason. This is actually made to a die. So this is, I made a die and then it's made to specification. This luckily is, you just get in shops for actually worshipping the deities. And some of them I just like grinded and came to the right measurement. But any case, after the ghaṭīkā was made, so I just put this bowl in the water, and the readings I got was, this is what Prabhupada writes in this verse, that is 3.11.9, it should be 30 minutes. I said, well, good, I get 30 minutes, then, but what is 24 minutes? Because Prabhupada is using 24 minutes. So that was something really fascinating for me. He says, okay, he writes here that if you make a vessel to such specifications, it has to be 30 minutes for a ghaṭīkā. Two things. One was, this is the Pratyaksha Praman, but it has to be supported by Shabda. So the commentaries of the Acharyas should also verify it has to be 30 minutes. And secondly, if it is 30 minutes, then what is 24 minutes? Now, interestingly, the verse, the primary meaning is that you actually make a vessel, and before the vessel sinks in the water, so it should have 1 prastha volume of water inside it. So before the water bowl actually sinks, it starts overflowing. Before it overflows, the volume of water that should enter should be 1 prastha. According to that, you're supposed to make the vessel. So it's not the easy thing. You have to actually do trial and errors before you come to that. That's the primary meaning, and that's what all the commentators say, actually, the commentators that we mentioned initially. But the lakshan, or the secondary meaning of the verse is, a person with common sense will ask, how do I know the volume of the vessel for accommodating 1 prastha of liquid before it sinks? Because it does not, actually fill and then sink. Just before it's filled, it actually starts overflowing. So actually the volume is less than the volume of the vessel. So the secondary meaning here is that the question will be put up, well, you cannot know the volume of the vessel. So indirectly it is stating that the volume of the vessel is 1 prastha. So if you take the volume of the vessel as 1 prastha, then you have the amount of water entering into it less than 1 prastha. And that is, it exactly sinks in 24 minutes. So the same verse by the primary and the secondary meanings gives both values. That's 30 minutes and 24 minutes. And why does it do? Why does it do that? Just as Dr. Iyengar was, clearing this point that, in terms of Kal, it's the reference between the earth and the sun to measure the units of time. Before there is sun, there is no point of talking about the units of time because they don't exist. And this is what the Bhagavatam is doing. So for the verses from 1 to 8, it is actually taking the sun and the earth as the reference points. Just from verse number 10 to further on, it also brings in the moon. So before the 9th verse, it's talking about a tropical system. And after the 9th verse, it starts talking about a sidereal system, a nakshatra-based system. So the Bhagavata is mentioning both systems, the zodiac, sun zodiac, and also the sidereal, the nakshatra system. Very interesting. And I found it very fascinating. And logically also, even in terms of symbolism, of course, just to get through the data of what it was, 2 things is for the same verse also appears in the Bhāgavata Purāṇa. But there it clearly says that this vessel calculates that this vessel sinks in the water body 60 times in a day, which implies it's 24 minutes for a ghaṭīkā. So one may say, oh, maybe it's speculative. You use your imagination to actually come to this, because I think someone in the discussion just mentioned, you can stretch when you're using grammar. But the point is, the same verse is used to also define 24 minutes in the Bhāgavata Purāṇa. So then this becomes the Shabda Praman for the same verse justifying 24 minutes, which is used by the Bhagavat to justify 30 minutes. And this is clarified. By the commentator Sridhar Swami, and also by Vishwanath Chakri Thakur. And he says in his commentary, 6 or 7 nadikas make a prahar or a yam. Day and night are divided into 4 parts. When the day or night is short, then there are 6 nadikas in a prahar. When the day or night is long, then there are 7 nadikas in a prahar. This does not include the nadika at the 2 sandhyas. Because it is impossible to list all the differences for each day of the year, the time is not fixed. This is indicated by the word va. So mathematically it translates 6 nadikas in a day into 4 prahars. So if there are 6 nadikas in a day, that means the day is short and the night is long. So the night will have 7 nadikas. So 6 into 4 plus 7 into 4 minus the 2 nadikas of the 2 sandhyas. That's the 4 nadikas. So we have 48 nadikas in 24 hours, which implies a calculation of 30 minutes for a ghaṭīkā or a nadika. So this is the Shabda Praman from the verse for 30 minutes. So we have both the Shabda Praman for 24 minutes and 30 minutes, and we also have the Pratyaksha Praman for the verse actually defining 24 minutes and 30 minutes. Now, of course, so one may question, but traditionally a muhurta is taken as 48 minutes. So then how do you justify for a 30 minutes ghaṭīkā a muhurta of 60 minutes? Well, muhurta etymologically means, a movement. That's its etymological Sanskrit meaning. But when you are trying to actually assign a unit or a value to it, it depends upon what system you are using. So like the Hora Shastra uses hora. So hora is actually 1 hour. It varies according to the day time as the days get longer and shorter. But on an equinox, it will be 1 hour. So for a hora system, that's a tropical system, the ghaṭīkā is 30 minutes. And for a sidereal nakshatra-based system, the ghaṭīkā is 24 minutes. That is the understanding that the Bhagavatam actually gives out. Also interestingly, actually the Bhagavatam could have said any vessel and any liquid. Why should it use copper and water? Because copper is generally donating sun. Copper also means arka. That is the meaning of copper. And arka also means sun. Similarly, the moon is signified by water. Specifically, these are the shlokas that I'm quoting from the Bhrat-jataka, which actually ascribes copper to the sun and gems to the moon. So the ocean is known as Ratna Garbha. That is where the jewels are found. So indirectly saying that moon is related to water. Also, there's a verse that says from the Brit Samhita, the rays of the sun falling on and being reflected by the watery moon. This is what it clearly says. So basically, taking the copper and water is just not, some random choice. It's a very conscious choice. So symbolically, mathematically, and even with Shabda Praman, it becomes very clear that ghaṭīkā is having 2 values, 24 minutes and 30 minutes, depending upon what the Bhagavat is trying to say in a specific context. What is the frame of reference that it's using? What is the system that it is using? It's the tropical system or the sidereal system. Once that is clear, then it becomes very easy actually to calculate the reference latitude. Of course, interestingly, here I am taking, because you are using the measurements of angula and all, so that is derived from yojana equals to 8 miles. So indirectly it also confirms that yojana is equals to 8 miles, because the whole has to be taken, the measurement has to be done like that. And in the verses preceding to this verse, that's verse number 5, it says the size of the smallest particle visible to the naked eye in the sunshine, which enters through the holes of a window screen as calculated from Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, taking the above value of yojana, it comes to about 64 microns. This is the accepted value. It's between 58 to 72 microns for the smallest particle that is visible to the naked eye. So indirectly, it also confirms the value for the yojana. It confirms the value of the ghaṭīkā, making it contextual to the system that you are using. Once you actually do that, of course, statistically also I found out, the terms of error. So for a mechanical clock, it's like about 0.002 seconds in a minute. Sorry for that error there. An electronic clock has an error of about 0.0046 seconds in a minute, and a water clock has 0.4997 seconds. The statistics that I used, I didn't highlight it for a long time. But then, also to make it clear, the commentaries actually clarify the temperature of the water, they clarify the turbidity of the water, they clarify many aspects of how this experiment has to be performed in a very poetic way, in a very nice and, very pleasing to the ear also to hear. So it's not that the acharyas are discounting any type of scientific rigor in presenting what they are. So the Bhagavad, though it's known for its poetic and devotional aspect, is very scientific in its presentation. That's what I want to highlight here. Of course, there are at least 4 or 5, 6 papers I've done on this. This is the first paper. And the second paper actually continues to highlight that once you know the value of the ghaṭīkā is contextual, then you can calculate the reference latitude. And the reference latitude, interestingly, comes to 24 degrees north. That is the Tropic of Capricorn, and of Cancer, Tropic of Cancer. And it has to be, in all probability, Ujjain, because Ujjain is also supposed to be where the prime meridian, the longitude for the Siddhāntic texts lie. So taking, and that is confirmed by both aspects, because the Bhagavad then in the 21st chapter uses the tropical system in a very simple way to say that the daytime changes from equinox to the summer solstice like about 30 minutes a month, so for a cumulative of 90 minutes. And that's only possible in a tropical system. And that comes 24 degrees north. That's the closest you get. Of course, I'm not going to the details. And then it uses a sidereal system and a tropical system combination of defining the different velocities of the sun. As Aditya was mentioning, you use a gnomon. So when you're using a gnomon, it implies a geocentric system, at least in terms of measurement, because then the sun is moving and the earth is stationary. So in that, just as you have in the heliocentric system, as you move from the equator to the poles, then the velocity of the earth actually becomes maximum at the equator and 0 at the poles. But it becomes exactly reverse when you're using a geocentric system. So that is what the Bhagavad does, and you come up with a latitude of 24.02 degrees by one set of calculations, and between 24 degrees and 24.5 degrees north by another set of calculations. So that is how the ghaṭīkā actually helps you to define the horizontal coordinates, horizontal coordinate system that is being used. That's the reference latitude of 24 degrees north. So thank you very much for your patient hearing, and I'm ready to take any questions if anyone has. Thank you. Yes.
I am not anything, but the Madhvacharya has dealt with this topic also, and one paper is going to be published in soon that takes 24 minutes.
Yes. In fact, Dr. Iyengar has also worked, right? One of your research, I think Sudarshan has worked on it, right?
Akshara calculation.
Yeah, exactly.
The same Swarna Prastha.
Yes.
Swarna Mashatha.
Yes.
Calculation is arrived at 24 minutes.
Right.
So, but maybe.
Yeah, 24 minutes is definitely there. That's what I clarified. The 24 minutes is definitely there, but it's for a sidereal system, and then 30 minutes is for a tropical system. So, but the interesting point is the Bhagavatam is using both systems to actually come to derive a model of the cosmology. Yeah.
So, how Ujjain is being taken into account in the Bhagavad?
So when you calculate the reference latitude at where the velocities have been mentioned, I have not dealt with that because that will take another like 25 minutes. But okay, just to give you an idea, it's there in this. I can just.
My question is.
Yeah.
This prime meridian, etc. It came into existence only in the recent times. In the Siddhanta times, I don't know whether it existed in the earlier 1000 BC, 2000 BC, 3000 BC.
Yeah, you are quite justified in asking that question. But the point is, you cannot make any mathematical calculations without taking a reference plane. It's just impossible to do any mathematical calculations without taking a reference plane. You have to have a reference longitude, and you have to have a reference latitude, right?
Certainly.
Right.
What I heard from Iyengar, etc., that these people, Vedic people, they used to be in the Rajasthan or Arbudha Kshetra or Kurukshetra, whatever. So Jain finds a place later. That's what.
I'm not claiming. I'm not claiming. I'm just suggesting.
No, it means these calculations may be a little bit later, or it is my suspicion.
Yeah, but I'm not dating the Bhagavat.
Jain and Rohitaka is the prime meridian. So even if they were in Rajasthan, that place. Not Rajasthan, but Rohtak. That may be okay. That may be okay. Even Bhaskara was given Sthaneshwara, which is also near Rohtak only.
So the longitude is same. So longitude can be right up to the poles, right? And in terms of prime meridian. But I'm suggesting that not only the latitude, but it's also actually defining the prime meridian. It's a suggestion. I'm not claiming it, but it makes sense. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay. Thank you very much for your patient hearing. Hare Krishna. Yeah, if you help me in doing that, surely. Yeah, surely, with your blessings. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much for acknowledging.
Yeah, and I have to also acknowledge, I don't know if Rajeshwar is, Mukherjee. He was the one helping me for doing the Bengali translation of Bhakti Siddhanta Saree Thakur, which is based on Vishwanath Saree Thakur's commentary. Yeah, thank you very much.
So, thank you so much, Prema Gauranga Prabhu, for the effort of triangulation. This is the term that we refer to in the research methodologies, bringing in the theological references with the scientific experiment-based observations and mathematical derivations. So that makes the research more solid and validated in terms of the research language.